Are recorded. Thank you, Lemia. Class 1 is on Google Classroom, as is our PowerPoint. If you were not able to get on Classroom or for whatever reason you received it late, please make sure you join. That is where you'll get the recordings. That's where you'll get access to the PowerPoints and a lot of extra resources that we use as we go is put on Google Classroom. So you should by now have been on the Google Classroom. You should be on our WhatsApp. And if either of those are missing or you didn't get them, please make sure to privately message Lemia or myself, and we can help you. I think I should be looking this way. Okay, so thank you, everyone. Welcome to our second class of Freedom is the Future. Today's class is Centering Palestinian Voices and Theory and Context. My name is Besma Bisharat. We'll do intros later, but I didn't make it to the first class. I know some faces here, some new ones, but I'm the Palestine Education Director at PAC, and I'm very excited to be one of the facilitators of this course with you. So I'm going to start with a video just to center us in our conversation. It just works. Okay. Some of you may be familiar with this video. Most of you, I'm assuming, based on what I got from the first class. But I want everyone to just kind of try to focus and really stay in tune with all of the words and the language of this. And this will really help us center today's class.
I must die. You must live. To tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings, make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel's there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a tale.
Okay, so I'm looking with both my screens, so if you see me, does anyone want to either raise their hand or unmute and just share out any response to this poem, this video?
I think it was always interesting to me that the timing of when he wrote it. It was like right after the interview where he said that even if he has a marker and that's the last thing that he has in his hand that he would throw it. So there's almost like a bit of foreshadowing, and I think that foreshadowing is inevitable to have when you're in a place like Gaza under, a genocide and occupation. So that's always my first thought. Like he kind of knew what he was trying to tell us and he knew what was going to happen.
Thank you, Mama. Other thoughts? Manar, do you want to give the context in case anyone doesn't know who Rafat al-Ali is?
Yeah, so he was an English professor in Gaza, and he actually I mean, from my own perspective, I thought it was interesting that he traveled a lot and he actually gave lectures like in California and all over the place. But one of the things that he was very proud of is to teach in Gaza and stay in Gaza. And it showed that, he taught English, but he also talked a lot about the occupation and, the idea of not poetry as resistance and their rights. And he was very, very vocal. I followed him on Twitter. He was definitely a personality. Allah yarhamu. And so I know that he just had one of his books published. And yeah, I think that's really that you can he still has he had a YouTube channel, and so if you're interested, you can also go on YouTube and watch. He would upload some of his lectures.
Thank you, Manal. Um, Yes, so as Manad put it, Rafat Al-Hariri is one of those voices that you've always heard about. And just like you said, he obviously writes so much about the resistance and about the empowerment in Gaza, even though he was a university professor of English. And something that really always struck me about him is, especially in the last year, is how many people were personally touched by him. So you'll hear so many people from Gaza and beyond that are like, Rafat was my friend. He was my teacher. He was this. And he was just such a strong voice of Gaza. So I do recommend you read any of his poetry or any of his writing. And the reason we started with his poem today, obviously, with the genocide that's happening in Gaza, we continue to center the people of Gaza. But beyond that, just as today's class is titled, we want to center Palestinians. So, and this isn't to call anyone out, but I remember I'm someone noting from the first class, and this is something that is commonly said, that we want to give a voice to the voiceless when they speak about Palestine. And this is problematic because Palestinians have voices. So it's not about giving them a voice, they have their voices. It's about amplifying and supporting their voices. I see two hands. So I think it was Giuseppe first and then Abigail. Oh, sorry, guys.
Hi, can you hear me well?
Pina, I'm sorry. Hi.
It's okay. It's a hard name. Sorry if I'm also looking, I have two screens, so I'm looking both sides. I just want to say the same thing that Nida wrote in the chat when you were asking what does this bring to us, or like what does this make us feel. I just feel that there is like so much, as she said, like hopefulness when there is a bad situation. And I'm always sort of like when I see some people do videos on the social media, or they write some how they're feeling, people that are right now in Palestine, I always feel that I just don't know how they have this so much strength when they're just looking always of the whole community and not their own personal situation, that they may be in a bad situation, as we saw. He already passed away. How they can see as a community to move forward, even though they themselves may not. Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you. Abigail?
I just wanted to say, I was just going to show the two books. This is the one that just came out, and this is a memorial edition. He had edited and worked with young writers from Gaza. So this was a memorial edition that was just put out by Just World Books, who originally published him. And he was one of the founders, too, of We Are Not Numbers, which is a wonderful organization that gives a platform for young writers from Gaza to speak.
Yes, definitely.
So,
Yeah.
and his death was very targeted. He missed being able to see his first grandchild because uh, he died obviously before that, but I believe that they were then killed as well.
Right, and I think the poem was written for Shaymat, his daughter, I believe, and then she was killed in an airstrike following that, unfortunately. Allah yarhamhu. Lamia, if we could put those links or the titles in the chat, just so if anyone wants to look at those. Thank you. So going to our caterpillar, this caterpillar is that's what we call it. This will just guide us for all of our 8 sessions. So last week was Intro to Freedom is the Future, Identity then Diaspora, and today's class is centering Palestinian voices. Next week we'll be doing History Part 1. So this is kind of where we are at today. And here's a quick agenda. So We can't do group introductions for everyone again just because of time, but we do want everyone who was not able to introduce themselves last week just to do a quick introduction. Lamia, you can guide us on what the questions were because I don't even remember. I will end and do an introduction too. So if you are anyone that wasn't in class last time, if you can please prep your quick intro, and if you could do camera, that would be great. So if you haven't introduced yourself yet, if you can send that, if you can raise your hand or just unmute.
Hi, my name is Jabril Al-Kiswani. I'm a part of the 3+3 Law and Business program at Seton Hall, and I'm a member of the ACE team with PAC.
Thank you, Jibril. Nice to meet you. Welcome.
Hi, sorry I wasn't here last week either. Abigail Abasol Metzger. I live in Hohokus, New Jersey, and I've been involved with political or Palestinian advocacy for quite some time. And actually, I've been known PAC since it first started. Um, and the reason I wanted to do this, even though I've done a fair amount of study on Palestine, I wanted to do it with Palestinians leading the course rather than others who may be very, very knowledgeable, but it's still different. So,
Thank you, Abigail. I always love seeing Abigail. She's one of the first people I met working at PAC. And Abigail also leads PAX Christi, which is a great group.
Hi, assalamu alaikum. It's Hanan. I don't know. Can you see me? I can't see myself, but
Yes, I see you.
oh, okay. So my name is Hanan. I'm a registered nurse, and I'm a Palestinian American who is just more interested in kind of learning about my people's history of resistance and also participating in resistance activities. I'm part of PCRF, which is the Palestinian Children Relief Fund, as a volunteer, and as well as CARE, the Council American Islamic Relations organization that also helps Gaza. And then there's AM Civic, which is like another organization that's local to my state in Illinois, where they go to different town halls with in different suburbs to get a ceasefire agreement for Gaza.
Thank you, Hanan. That's amazing.
Hi, friends. My name is Alex. I am from North New Jersey, and I am a Quaker. I had the real privilege of working with Vesma at my Quaker meeting on a apartheid in Palestine event. So it's so good to see you again, Vesma. And I, like many have said, am so looking forward to centering Palestinian voices and learning.
Thanks, Alex. It's great to see you. Anas? Oh, hi, Anas.
Wait, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, my name is Anas. I am currently the Director of Operations at PAC. It's really exciting to join this class, one, because Basma is the one that's teaching it. So I'm really excited, and just to learn a lot of the history that I know and the work that she's been doing. So I'm just really excited for it.
Thank you, Anas. Alex?
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex. I am in Brooklyn, New York, and I take Arabic class through the People's Forum. And our instructor told us that this class was taking place. And so I've taken classes similar to this in the past, but I think very similar to Abigail's point, none that have ever been taught by Palestinians. And so I think like in an effort to continue education. That's why I'm here.
Thanks, Alex. We love the People's Forum. Okay, hi, how do you pronounce it? Haya or Haya?
It's Haya. Assalamu alaikum. I'm calling in from New Jersey. I'm originally from Ramallah, in a village called Jamala, and I'm really excited to be in this course because I studied political science, and I took a lot of like similar courses in college, but I never took a course specifically on Palestine that was taught by Palestinians. So, I'm really excited, for this course.
Thank you. We're excited to have you. Wendy?
Hi, I'm Wendy, and I work with a very small group here in Colorado, um, uh, doing ceasefire work and Palestinian solidarity. And my group posted this class up for us, and I wanted to learn more. I have a lot to learn, and so I'm happy to be here joining you.
Thank you, Wendy. We look forward to having you. I think there are a few. Anyone else that has not introduced themselves yet? Ala? La?
Yeah, I'm
Ashka?
here.
I'm to call you Ala. You want to just give a quick intro?
Yeah, sure. Just give me a moment. Just want to turn on my camera.
Okay, we'll come back to you.
Oh, okay, no worries.
Okay. And then Jennifer.
Hello.
Hi, Jennifer. Welcome.
Let me see. Can you see me?
Now I can see you.
Hi. My name is Jennifer. I don't see the questions, but I'm from North New Jersey. I mean, I found this because I want to learn more about Palestinian history because I mean, I haven't done enough research yet, but I've gone to protests and I've gone to little like study-ins and when I was in college a year ago and just want to know more about the movement before I spread more information about it. But and then I found this place, this community center in Clifton, so I'm just really excited to learn about it.
We're excited to have you. Yeah, this is definitely a great learning experience for all of us. Thank you, Jennifer. Ala, are you ready?
You see me good, right? All right, so my name, yeah, my name is Adea. I'm just a very recent college graduate from Seton Hall. I'm glad there's another Seton Hall student like me. I've been volunteering at PAC, being part of the civic engagement program with Halima. I'm Palestinian American, specifically from Bir Nabela. And I really wanted to take this course because I really wanted to be in a space where other people were interested in learning about Palestinian history. I am definitely not the first person to say this, but the amount of support that Palestinians have been getting, both domestically and abroad, has been something unprecedented. And I really wanted to experience some of that just because, alhamdulillah, I've been living in South Patterson my entire life. So I have the privilege of growing up with Palestinians and Syrians, Egyptians, whatever. And just a moment, I'm just reading the prompt, I guess, introductory prompt, but the moment when realizing being a Palestinian was controversial, I'd say maybe during my high school graduation, where it was after lockdown. And so we were the first group to finally have an in-person graduation. And I came wearing the Palestinian flag. And that was during the time where I forgot what it was. No, it was a Great One-Shot Return. That's where it was. And I didn't think about it too much because I was inspired by this kid on TikTok. He wore the Mexican flag to his graduation, but they took him off the stage. I just want to be like, yes, I'm Palestinian. I'm gonna show up. But instead of talking to my friends who I didn't see for 2 years, they just dragged me to the vice principal's office. And I had to negotiate my way to wear the Palestinian flag on stage. So yeah, it's been a journey since then, and I'm really glad to be here.
Thank you, Ala. But yeah, come to Palestine education events more. You'll meet a lot of people.
Oh, I know, but it's nice meeting people outside of New Jersey too.
That's true too. Yeah, this is a great group. Thank you, Ala. All right, anybody else? All right, if anyone else does join, feel free to put it into the chat. We're gonna continue, but we do love to hear from you guys. And just a reminder, throughout this class, we will be making this as interactive as possible. We like to hear from you all, whether it's through the chat or just on your screens, just so we could all learn from each other and get to meet each other, as Alat said. So like we said, moving forward, today's class is centering the Palestinian narrative. We're going to be doing some group reading and discussions for today. So now I'm going to hand off our discussion to Abir, who's going to help facilitate.
Thanks, Besma. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you all again. So we're going to do some reading, reflection, and thinking aloud in breakout rooms today. Like Besma said, we did, if you read the syllabus, there was a bit of a change and we are pushing what would have been later in the course up to today just to help us contextualize some things before we get into the history portions. So we're gonna Lemia, if you have the chapter link, do you mind putting it in the chat, please? So Lemia is gonna put a link to a chapter from this book called Palestine: A Socialist Introduction by Sumaya Awad and Brian Bean. Hopefully some of you guys are familiar with it or have seen it. It's a great, Sumaya Awad's actually, I think, still works with Adala Justice Project, who we mentioned last week was one of the was an organization that really spearheaded this Freedom is the Future campaign and what the demands are. So we have a lot to learn from her, and this book is really great. I would recommend buying it, supporting her, and reading all of it. For today, what we're gonna do is just start with the, I think it's chapter 1 or the intro chapter. We're gonna split into breakout rooms, and each breakout room is going to I split up each header for each breakout room. There's a lot of us, so instead of doing only 3 breakout rooms, I'm gonna create 6, but like there will be 2 groups reading the same sections, if that makes sense. So if you open up, just so you guys you're able to talk more, because a big group, you're not gonna be able to talk as much. We're gonna start with 15 minutes to see how that goes. I know we all come from different paces of reading. Some of us read faster, some of us need some more time. So just work with your group. We're reading, we don't want to give homework. So we don't want to ask you all to come in reading it already. We're gonna read together. Hopefully it's not too long. Give yourself some time to also discuss. There are some questions that we want you to keep in mind. Besma, do you mind sharing the screen and putting those questions up? You don't have to follow these. You can talk about whatever you want to talk about from this section of the chapter that you are reading. But these are just some guiding things in case you need it, and we can also put them in the chat. So if you open up the chapter, everyone's going to read, there's like a short intro paragraph. Everyone's going to read that. And then depending on what group you are, which is in the, it's put in the chat, you're going to read a specific section or 2 sections. And then everyone's going to also go all the way towards the end. And there's a section called Today, and you're going to read that. Oh, thank you, Lamia, for putting them, for putting the discussion questions also in the chat. Basma, do you mind opening up the chapter just to make sure everyone knows the beginning and the end portion, just so we can all see it together? Does this make sense to everybody? So we're all reading the beginning of the chapter. You're gonna go to whatever section it is based off your breakout room number, and then we're all gonna read the end, which is another short section called Today. And then you all will discuss. You can follow these prompts. You can give a summary. What are the main points? How does this fit into current present day context of what you know, what you've learned about Palestine? Does the author have an intervention here, and what is it? What can it teach us about Gaza from what you've learned about Gaza in the last year or so? What stands out the most, and then what doesn't make sense, and what do we need clarification on? So you're going to want to talk about these as a group, and then we're all going to come back and each group is going to share out. And then hopefully as we're sharing out, what we will do is kind of put things together, really theorize some things, answer any questions that might have come up from that last bullet point for you guys, etc. Does this make sense? Can I get a thumbs up from everyone? Okay. Everyone was able to open the chapter. Everyone understands the breakout. Okay. And then there should be at least each one of us as co-hosts in the rooms, and we'll try to rotate in and out of the rooms. So we're going to start with 15 minutes. So we would regroup exactly 8:15. We'll check in. If that's not enough time, we can see, and we can we can give each other some more time. So I do want to have enough time for the large conversation too. Any questions before we get into our groups? You can
Hey,
just
sorry, I just want to make sure I'm not missing something. So I clicked the link, but is there like an intro? Because I just see chapter 1.
the intro is like the first paragraph before there's a title, section title.
Awesome.
Does that make sense? Okay. Perfect. I'm just making sure there is a host in each.
Sorry,
That's
one
fine.
quick question. If we get thrown out, what should, like, if something happens, what should we do?
Oh, just come back to the main group and I'll put you
Okay.
back.
Okay.
And remember your group, your room number if possible. Okay. Any other questions before I send us all into our breakout rooms?
Okay, and I'm gonna assign, people are just gonna go assigned automatically into a
Oh, I
group.
have it, Basma. Sorry. I'm doing it. The breakout rooms?
Oh, you're doing? Okay.
Yeah, I got it. I'm just waiting. We're all okay. Basma, it's not letting me put you in a breakout room, I think. So if you want to just join one, I
I'll
think because
just
you're the
join.
host. Okay, I'm opening the rooms. Right. Did everyone get their rooms? So you'd have to click join. There should be something that popped up.
Yeah, it says whoever didn't. There's a few people that didn't join.
Okay. So Murad and is it Ala?
Ala.
Ala. Okay, Ala. Murad, this means you are not on your computer. Okay, I also put each one of us. Does it not show up for Lamia and Rania?
No, it does, but they didn't join.
Oh, okay.
But
Do
they
you guys
are.
want to join history as that intro? Oh, yes. Thank you for whoever started recording it, Lamia.
Right after. That was perfect.
No, we needed what you shared, but it's okay. It's not the beginning of Palestinian history, and that is an important part of the author's intervention in that beginning intro paragraph, right? Palestine was a fully functioning society with people and an economy and culture, etc. But it does mark the beginning of Palestine, the settler colonization of Palestine, and understanding like where Palestine is now, but not all of Palestine. I think that's an important intervention, and another one that we will reference a lot throughout the course, and I think they talk about more towards the end, is that it's not just one event that happened in the past, right? It is something that's ongoing. Lesna, can we actually not share screen, please, if that's okay? Just so we can all see each other. Thank you. It's something that is ongoing, and I think that this phrasing of the Nakba was a lot newer, at least on social media, in the past year. So many of you maybe saw it, especially at like the 75th commemoration of the Nakba recently happened, where it is an ongoing thing, because Palestinians continue to be displaced, and to this day, and as we saw in Gaza how many people became displaced. So it is something that is ongoing because the settler colonial project is still ongoing and still exists. Anyone else from 1 or 4 want to share from that section about the Nakba? Either share what we learned or what we didn't understand. Yes, thank you, Barry. The Nakba never ended. I know in our group, I'm just going to speak on behalf of this point that a couple shared from our group, because I think it's really important. We were talking about kind of how do you see this happen to you, and then go and replicate it towards another group of people. And that was a conversation that we were having. And I think what I shared, and I want to transition this perfectly into the conversation about Zionism. So for group 2 to take in is we have to understand it as a structural thing, and as it is a system of imperialism and settler colonialism and a lot of other isms that allow people to continue to do this to others in the name of statehood and nation building, and superiority and manifest destiny, and like the list can go on. So I think for me, at least, the best way to really contextualize, like, how does one person be able to do this and go into another village and do this? I think we have to realize how deeply ingrained settler colonialism and white supremacy and like these project building missions are in individual people's heads. And how do we, when we're talking about decolonization and liberation, that is the first step, and a really big step towards that is to undo a lot of that learning that people have been conditioned with. So group 2, does anyone want to share maybe definition of Zionism? What are the authors, 2 or 5, I guess it would have been, if you guys are here.
Hey friends, I've been appointed our group's speaker, and I don't have 2 screens, so forgive me. I posted something really long in the chat that you shouldn't read because it's probably jumbled, but I will orally say that we talked about the section on what is Zionism and kind of modern incarnations, and the section started with a discussion of the 2018 Basic Law, which says that Israel is a state that represents Jews and not all Israeli citizens, which would of course include Palestinian citizens of Israel, which of course erases indigenous Palestinians from the authority that controls them, and also enables, just massive violence. The current war on Palestinian life, of course, being the most brazen example on the I was going to say on the screens of our television, except it's not there. Maybe on our social media and in human rights reports. We also talked in our group about how explicitly colonial the writings of Jabotinsky and Herzl that we got snippets of, just how clearly they were colonizers and recognized that in their vision of what Zionism would be, what a Jewish state would be. And, we noted that, of course, the anti-Semitism in Europe was very real. The authors did a kind of socialist analysis that you're mentioning, Aviad, with that discrimination that and persecution that Jews felt were subjected to in Europe. But then how that was manipulated by these Zionist kind of ideologues, Herzl and Jabotinsky, to again carry out all that violence and settler colonial projects in Palestine. And we also said that we reflected on, this was outside the reading, but we reflected our own position as Americans, many of us, and how the same kind of story, or similar story, not the same story, happens here with a kind of religiously persecuted minority of people in Europe coming here and perpetrating genocide and racial injustices against indigenous people. So we really liked what the authors did. We thought that they really drew out how secular ideologies could be weaponized for settler colonial ends, and how it was also kind of arbitrary that Palestine was chosen, considering that Argentina, Uganda, even the US Midwest was kind of on the table for colonization. We also appreciate that socialist lens about economic pressures, and we noted that no matter how much oppression, economic and otherwise, that Palestinians are subjected to, they're still denied the right to self-determination, and that's because of dehumanization. And we're wondering today how Zionist kind of ideology has morphed, because it's no longer popular to call yourself a colonizer. So how do you continue a settler colonial project without that kind of explicit admission, which we saw in the early years? So.
Thank you, Alex. That was great. That was a really great. It sounded like your group had a really good conversation. I think just to reiterate some of what you said, it's so language matters in the way that we talk about Palestine and the colonial state of Israel. And you mentioned that a lot, and I think it's really important about like how do we talk about Zionism. And one of what's you mentioning that like Palestine was kind of just chosen out of a couple other options is really important, because one of the myths, and it's referenced in this chapter, and if you have time, I would definitely read it, is Ilan Pappé's 10 Myths of Israel, is that we are like the rightful people of this land, or like this is a religious connection that we have to the land, which Judaism does have a very significant relationship to the land of Palestine. And like the introduction of the chapter says, there were three religions living harmoniously and side by side. So what understanding Zionism as a political, colonial, and imperial project does is really diminish that myth, right? That Zionism is not about getting closer to like the religious aspect of that land, because that has already existed if you really know the history of Palestine pre the Nakba. But what it really is it's a political project. It's a colonial project for economic gain, racial gain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So talking about Zionism and naming Zionism in the correct way is really important. I remember last week, a lot of people were sharing that like we want to be able to have conversations with people and in the right way, using the right language, like be able to have these conversations very confidently. And the biggest way to do that is to be confident in the language and the words that you're using and how to define them. So knowing how to define Zionism and what it means is a first step when you're having conversations with people about like, well, like anti-Semitism versus anti-Zionism, for example, if that comes up, and how to talk about Israel as a settler colonial project, which also is really important, because what that does is frame Israel and Zionism as like a strong political country, I guess, or state, or settler colonial state. And it frames Palestinians as indigenous native people to that land, which is really important. Because if we don't talk about Israel's settler colonial project, then we're also somewhat erasing Palestinians as being indigenous to that land. Palestinians of all religions, but Palestinians being indigenous to that land. And that framing is really important when we're thinking about right of return, and who has the right of return, who should be able to return, what do we do with that land, who is the land for, etc. So thank you, Alex, for that great summary. Does anyone else from either 2 or 5 want to add anything?
I just wanted to add one little thing about the definition and the like self-determination / turning into dehumanization, is that there has to be an intentional cognitive dissonance, because the definition of Zionism blatantly makes they call it like a fictitious state, worldwide Jewish nation, in order to justify self-determination. And there has to be like a cognitive dissonance to put that under self-determination rather than secular colonialism. Within the same moment, if you were brought into Zionism and believed in self-determination because of like European anti-Semitism, you also have to have this other layer of cognitive dissonance when you see Palestinians resist and ask for self-determination and say that they don't deserve it. Then you have to actively dehumanize them, because the premise or the claim that Zionism has is that we feel this self-determination. And so in order for you to deny it to someone else when you know what's happening and you are an active participant, you actually have to say that they are less than and they don't actually deserve that self-determination. And so like there is an intentionality in their own definitions and in their own history to have cognitive dissonance, because it wouldn't work otherwise.
Exactly. Thank you, Manod. And that actually, I think, takes us really well into the next group in their sections. So groups 3 and 6, your sections were Zionism and the Jews and Zionism and imperialism. Does anyone want to share from either group? And kind of, I think you will naturally expand on Manod's point, which was really important.
I think we talked a little bit about the condescending nature of the Western powers and the Zionists, and I was sort of struck by and I've read Herzl before. I was really struck by it. Was almost like self-hating Jews, um, how they talked about their own people, and I think that that had to do with the fact that there was a lot of condescending qualities of the Germans, Jews, and the socialized intellectuals, urban, to the Eastern, who were subjected to the pogroms and everything. And then we also spoke about, I'll get there. I'm old. You see, I have white hair. I have no memory. I'll let somebody else pick up. Oh, about how it was such a thriving country, how it was a thriving place before that introduction.
Yeah, I really like the introduction. I like that it started with like the orange trees and like all the trees and a
It
lot
was
of
very visual.
yeah, it very much centers a lot of the symbols that we talked about last week too. Thank you, Abigail. Anyone else from either group wanna share? I think Abigail might.
Just to add on to Abigail, because we were in the same group,
Mhm.
we definitely touched upon internalized anti-Semitism and the prejudices and the way ideas affect people and how they go about, I guess, obtaining justice for themselves. We Palestinians say we want our land back and nothing more, nothing less, but the Zionists wanted to go further than that. And we were talking about in the section of Zionism and imperialism how Theodore Herzl, he would go to different heads of states despite knowing what they've done in order to gain what he sees as a very feasible, long-lasting solution to the problem of Jewish persecution, which he himself blames the Jews for. It's so weird, the cycle of trauma and um just discrimination. But yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. I have some thoughts, but I want to give space for everyone else to share first before I add on to what you just shared.
In our group, sorry, Nida, you go, I'll listen.
Okay, we'll
No,
do Nida and Hanan.
That's actually, Hanan, you go ahead.
Well, you may be saying the same thing I'm going to say. So I was going to say that in our group, we discussed how interesting and like how horrifying it was. The word I love that Nida used was nefarious. Like how the Zionist movement was a fringe movement, and that there were Jews that didn't agree with it, to something that was like becoming the most popular movement among the Jews. And then we discussed like why was Palestine chosen as a land as opposed to the other options, and and then my point that I brought up in the group was like, how can we get the white man to sympathize with the plight of the Palestinians? And if we can get that sympathy, then that would change the narrative that may change the trajectory of what's happening in Palestine.
Okay, I have a thought on that too, but Nida, did you want to add?
I think she put that really well. We talked about how it was like a classic, the ends justify the means, that we can align with oppressors and promote oppression as long as in the end we get what we want. And it's just that perpetuation of this myth that for humanity to progress, somebody needs to be on top and we need to squish somebody else. And it happens and propagates over and over rather than us finding a way out of it and appealing to our better humanity. It's just using the ends justify the means, and the fastest, best way to get what we want is to get it at the expense of someone else. And sometimes at the expense of Jews. The Zionism movement did things at the expense of the Jews to achieve their goals too.
Yeah, thank you, Nida. I mean, I think what both of you are sharing, and a little bit of what Abigail shared too, is continuing to expose Zionism as a part of Western white supremacy, right? When we're talking about white supremacy and Western supremacy, we're not necessarily literally talking about individual white people. And this goes back to the structural conversation. It's referring to the structures of colonialism and racism and classism and imperialism, etc., that white supremacy was founded on and relies on. So when we're talking about Zionism, we have to kind of disassociate it in ways from Jewish identity and religion, because then it helps really understand it as a system of white supremacy that does all of these things that this chapter is laying out. And it's harming Palestinians, but also the entire world, if we want to talk about environmental impact and so many other impacts that are really like that have a global effect. So this is another way of like, how do we talk about Zionism? We have to frame it in these ways that you all are talking about, because it helps expose its violence even more, and who this violence is against. Obviously, Palestinians are facing the most and the brunt of this violence, but we can also talk about it as like another structure of white supremacy that causes global violence too. And to go to your point, Hanan, about like getting the white man to sympathize or other people to sympathize, I think, to be honest, I think it's gonna be like there's a reason America and Israel work so well together and are friends, right? Because they are founded on and rely on these same legacies of white supremacy and all the other stuff that we are talking about, for it to exist. And so like these powers are, we always say like they're the ones who are going to speak to each other. So then the people that they are oppressing and the indigenous communities that are harmed, and just all the other communities that are harmed, also then naturally start working in solidarity with each other and working together because they recognize the powers in play. And I think that's a really good transition to that last section, which is today. And I do want to make sure we have some time to talk about it. But before we do, just want to see if anyone from any group, but especially the last ones, want to share or add anything before we spend some time on that last section of today and tying it into America. Yes, Josephine.
Sorry, I didn't unmute. Yeah, I'm from the group 5 and we were in the more middle section, but since it's being brought up again, another thing our group discussed, we were talking about, and you just said this about the white supremacy and how this project is also racist in its inception. And we think that besides Palestine wasn't the only place that was considered to establish this settlement, but we also discussed how in the end it served a dual purpose, not only to weaponize the religion, like the secularization of the Jewish state, but also we discussed how that section particularly is the least non-white in terms of the other places that they were discussing, and how you're still very close to Europe and to that imperial power, and you still one of them without initially being from them. I don't know if that makes sense, how you're still very close to Europe and you're still not that far away from white. And how this is like another layer of the racism that this movement Zionist it works.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, and it really points to the structural piece, like how strong and powerful it is, because it really is just a larger system and structure that we have to fight against, unfortunately. I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chat too. I'm trying to keep up with them. I think I shared this with the group that I was in, but a lot of this is reminding me of talking about like narrative and what's normalized and what isn't. I don't know, Basma, do you remember, Muhammad al-Kurd has like the playbook of something. What is it called? I'm forgetting that name, what he called it, but he calls it, or if anyone else knows what I'm talking about.
Playbook. Wait.
I'm gonna share my screen because or maybe he just calls it the playbook, but he talks about how it says they make up a lie, there's no evidence for it. Western journalists spread it like wildflower. Diplomats and politicians, I'm gonna put this in the chat, parrot it loudly. A narrative is built, the general public believes it, the damage is done, and then they admit this never happened. And this was referencing a lot of the conversations happening. Yes, thank you, Lamia. Happening in October of all of the lies that Israel was putting out to justify what they were doing in Gaza. So like the beheaded babies and the accusations of sexual assault and stuff. And so this when talking about like narrative and media and how ingrained it can really get in our head, how is it that like we have to question, right? Like how is it that they can put out these lies and they have the platforms and the power to really make everyone believe it with no evidence and no proof, and even when proof comes out against it, they're still able to use it as justification. And no, I think to me nothing can explain that better than structural and systemic things that we all just shared right now. Yes, hello.
Just to piggyback off of your comments about how structural and systematic the Palestine issue is, this is something I was mentioning in our group discussion where the issue of Palestine, I know somebody else said that they want, how can we get sympathy from the white folk? This, I don't know if this sounds controversial to everyone else, but that's not what I want, because at the end of the day, the issue of Palestine goes back to the political heads of states and how they themselves resolve this issue, because Palestine is a chess piece of Western imperialism. And alhamdulillah, now the tides have been changing. So we're starting to see America getting worried about how they have to compete with China now. And we're seeing China come in and actually help negotiate or even cooperate with different issues within the Arab world. So I was thinking about, well, yes, we want to help change the public image of Palestine. At the end of the day, we're going to have other regional players like China and the Gulf states that are going to come in and they're going to help, inshallah, do the diplomatic work at the back end. We need to do what we need to do. Like I'm not trying to downplay the intellectual work. That's very important. But at the end of the day, it's such a systematic issue that ultimately this kind of the solution to this goes at the top. And we are starting to see the end to Zionism, inshallah, within the next 5 to 10 years. I don't know how it's going to end. I mean, we've seen the ceasefire draft deal, which inshallah most likely, hopefully Israel agrees to. If anyone can get an update about that. But yeah, that was just a thought.
Thank you, Ella. And I think what you are saying is references a really important point that we can also get through throughout the course is like each one of us can play a different role when talking about the Palestinian movement. Some of us are going to be doing work in intellectual spaces. Some of us are going to be doing work on the ground. Some of us might be lobbying people in power, etc. I think all those ways are valid and needed, and that's where we kind of each figure out like where's my skill and where's my talent and where do I put that. I would just challenge one thing if I can. I think the liberation of Palestine is going to happen from the resistance and from the bottom and not from the people at the top. So if I may say that, I think diplomacy and things do come into play, but at the end of the day, from what we've learned from other resistance movements and people who have liberated themselves, it does. And when I say the bottom, I mean that in a theoretical way, like, the people who might be put at the bottom of power structures, but really have the power, which is people and people power. And so what that looks like and how we create that and how we envision that is a conversation for us to keep having throughout the course. Was that your hand that was up? Was that someone else?
It was, but I'm still thinking about my thought, so I don't think I have it formalized.
Okay.
I was just clapping to what you were saying. And I was gonna say no one is usually popular when they're fighting for their rights. They're usually celebrated afterwards. And so when we look at like Nelson Mandela, he was still on the US terrorist list until like the 2000s. Whitewashed history of MLK or the dehumanization and of like every single movement of oppressed people was just never popular in their time. They're usually celebrated afterwards. And I just kind of wanted to say that like I agree that we don't have to wait for white people's sympathy, because if we do, we'll never get anywhere. It does have like I was clapping because it's gonna come from the resistance. It's gonna be on the people on the ground, like Abir said.
Thanks, Mahmoud. Anyone else want to add to the conversation? We've kind of just opened it up. We can focus on that last section of today or just let the conversation go where it needs to go. Abigail, I see you.
I'm just gonna put something into the chat. There's an organization called Voices from the Holy Land, and every month they screen a film, and then have either somebody, a producer or director, whatever, talk about it. And in fact, this Sunday, it's the third part of Marketing the Occupation and the social media battleground in a time of war, which speaks to what you were saying, the whole playbook of making, putting forth a story that in often is not true, or at least it's certainly not documented. Like I kept seeing, oh, they've just shown a terrorist from the hospital who X, Y, and Z, and they say that, but then they don't give you the information. They never show the actual documentation, or so rarely. And it's sort of gaslighting the general public. So I'm going to put this in if anybody's interested. This is a good organization to sign up for because they run very, very good programs once a month on a Sunday.
Thank you, Abigail. Yes, and we want everyone to be sharing resources too. And I know Lemia's just put the WhatsApp group in the chat, so definitely join that. And this course is also meant to build community for you all outside of these 8 weeks also. So please definitely share resources if you have with everybody. Anyone else want to add anything? Chime in. This is also a time for questions, things that didn't make sense. I know this book was could be a little dense or heavy, so we have space to like unpack it and talk about it.
Especially if you haven't spoken today. I want to share.
And maybe we can focus on that today section and really bring it into well, part of what's important for us in this class is like walking away with something that we can do and things that we can do. So for me in the today section, it really it was like a shift to think about like solidarity and like shared the ways that different communities are affected by shared systems of oppression. Like they make the links of like Israel sharing or ICE sharing tactics with Israel. We know like police forces share tactics. We know we've been talking about blindism as a system that plays hand in hand with other systems that oppress multiple communities. So maybe we can focus a little bit on that if anyone has thoughts or questions of like how these things play together and what we can do and what understanding them as working hand in hand really does for our movement. Yes, Nida.
It's still kind of a half-baked idea, but as I was reading through, I know I have a lot of like personal development work to do, but I was feeling really sad and really depressed, just because it's bringing to light how deep-rooted, like how, yes, this is about Palestine, but it's also bringing all these really deep-rooted problems. And like you mentioned, how Zionism is piggybacking off of these other systems like colonialism and things to be able to gain its power, and tying that into white supremacy that we are seeing happen in the US. And it just makes me realize how important unity is among all marginalized groups globally, and especially here in the US, that just like they are gaining so much power from being connected with these other systems, we need each other. All movements of oppressed people, we need each other a lot.
Yes, and I think that was a great thought. I don't think it was half thought out at all. But yeah, and I think that's the important of solidarity. And I think I always think about like I see people write like, I wish I wasn't so aware of what was going on in the world because I wouldn't be so like sad and depressed. But unfortunately, like when you are aware and you know you really realize what is going on, I think the best way is just to be able to channel that into action, at least for me, and like what do I do and what is my role and figuring that out, and how do I work in solidarity with others. I think it's very sad to see like how many communities and groups of people it affects, but then at the same time I think it also shows like these are all people I can work with that can understand my struggle in some way, and so I'm not alone and I have people and communities to work with and rely on, which is going to make us stronger and our movement a lot stronger too. I saw Caroline and then Hanan.
I just wanted to comment how interesting it is that everyone in this group, we're talking about recognizing solidarity, collectiveness, but Zionists also see that as well, but not because they want unity, but to sow division. So they're recognizing it too, but they're using it in the opposite way.
Yeah, very interesting, actually. Thank you, Caroline. Hanan.
Sorry, I'm reading the comments. They're really good.
Same. I'm trying to keep up with them.
But you know what I thought when you mentioned about collaborating with other disenfranchised groups of people? Two things. Why was Ukraine given so much attention in the media for what was going on with like the war on Russia against the Ukraine, but not enough attention was given to the genocide in Palestine, you know what I mean, in the media. And like, I was working in a hospital that was like white, predominantly white. You know, I was the only Palestinian Arab Muslim in the entire hospital. That's how white dominated it was. It was white and Filipino. And everyone like on my unit that I worked with were making badges of you for Ukraine, like pray for Ukraine, pray for Ukraine. None of my coworkers ever talked about Palestine to me. None of them were like, "Hey Hanan, I hope your family is okay in Palestine. How is it going there? Like, I'm so sorry for what's going on." Like, no one ever talked to me about that. Like, it was like they're totally blindsided.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, I thought about Black Lives Matter movement. There were a lot of like on social media that on Instagram, I have a lot of Muslim people that I follow, and they were promoting Black Lives Matter, you know, so that would have been a great collaboration like between the African American community and the Palestinian community. But like, I don't know what the relationship is between the Palestinian and African American community, to be honest with you. I don't see that there's a strong support from African Americans for Palestine, you know, but that would be a very great collaboration if possible.
So historically, there has been a lot of Black Palestinian solidarity. I actually wrote a whole thesis about it and can talk about it for way too long, but it does exist, and we will get to it in the solidarity conversation. That's the point. Like Black Palestinian solidarity has history for like years and a decade, if not well, more than decades. We could go back to the 60s if we really want to. So it does exist. I think maybe individual people are going to be on different spectrums, but like as a movement and as like representatives from BLM and beyond, and even going back to like Malcolm X and understanding international relations, that solidarity has existed. And I think this is where we really need to think of like structural and not maybe individual. So like in 2014, people from 2014? Yes. Like there were tweets going around from people in Palestine, people in Ferguson of how to like protect yourself from tear gas. I think BLM 2020 definitely that movement, a lot of Black activists were very central and made sure that Palestine was a conversation. So on a structural level and on some larger community levels, that does exist, and we will definitely talk about it more in some of the coming courses. I think to touch on your first point about Ukraine, I have a lot of thoughts and potential reflections on that, but I also want to see what others maybe think. Why would it be that what was happening in Ukraine got so much sympathy, and I would say not just sympathy, like flat out hypocrisy, right? Because there were images of like Ukrainians with like weapons, like I'm gonna fight for my land if someone comes and takes it, and people were applauding that and being like, yeah, as you should, 100% have the right to fight for your land. But that same understanding can't be given to Palestinians, right? Of like, this is my land and I have every right to fight for it. So based off our conversation from today, what do folks think is some of the reason that that hypocrisy was there? Christine?
Yes, I think it ties back to our conversation about white supremacy and how the systems are set up. You know, Ukraine gets the support because they're white people. And we could see, like, you know, the children in Gaza are dying just because they're Palestinians. There's just no, the way our societies, global society sees things, or it just goes down to deep racism. That's one. And I also think it's the media narrative that you hear. It's all the control that, I guess, what the way Israel controls this country, they sort of make Ukraine look like an Israel, you know, and Russia and, you know, Palestine are, you know, like, you know, is Russia. So I have a lot of friends who see it that way, which it's unbelievable because it's like we're living into different realities. And I think it's, you know, it's the media too.
Yeah, I think you hit on, Tony. It's white supremacy. It's definitely the media narrative. I want to echo Manad's comment about Islamophobia, and that's brought up in this chapter too. Because, and I see Angela too. Islamophobia is and post 9/11, and you know, even before that, but definitely post 9/11, Islamophobic rhetoric makes it very easy to like fearmonger and to build onto an already awful narrative and image of Muslims. But to go back to the media and then to go to our conversation and tie this all together into like imperialism and colonial projects, it was very easy, and not just easy, it was a deliberate choice, and is beneficial for the US to support Ukraine because of Russia, right? And because of all of these other like global diplomatic geopolitics that are happening, the US wants to paint Russia as something and someone evil. And we don't have to necessarily get into that, but just to just explain why it is that it is beneficial for the US to support one group and not another. It really all goes back to US political and geopolitical interests and what supports the US. And so we, as people, if you do live on this land and here, we have to be very critical of like, okay, why are they telling me to support these people, and why is the media showing this person like that? And to speak about whiteness too, I think it was really exposed. There was the picture of Vahid Tamimi, who is a very white passing Palestinian, slapping the soldier. And I think someone circulated that image being like, look at this girl from Ukraine who's so brave and strong, and standing up to like a Russian soldier. But when Vahid Tamimi did that, she was like, gets thrown in jail and is like continues to be threatened by the Israeli state. And so they just continued exposing their hypocrisy then. But yeah, all the points we talked about exposing white supremacy and who does the US benefit from and who doesn't is all part of our media narratives.
I just wanted to add, I'm so sorry. I keep telling myself I'm not going to talk a lot, and I keep wanting
Oh, go ahead, Mama.
There's also a point of agency. I think that when you see pictures of Ukrainians and like women and children being armed, they're looked at as like they're gonna grow up and they're gonna be responsible with the power that they have because they have good intentions and that they're defending their land. But Muslims and Arab tend to be assumed that they're going to take advantage, that they're going to oppress even their own people. They don't even have agency to function, that they're never really seen as, you know, there's a possibility that even if they fight for self-determination, that they are civilized or smart enough to have the agency to be, you know, be able to rule their own land. And so I think it's because it goes back to it goes back to whiteness, but I think it's a very intentional colonial mindset that sometimes we see in leftist spaces as well, where we start thinking we're the saviors of them, like we need to let them know how they're going to free themselves. And so I think
starts with those type of imagery where we see people in Ukraine being celebrated, it's because there is this background of trust they will do the right thing and that Muslims or Arabs cannot be trusted.
Yes, thank you, Milad. And what you just shared reminded me a lot of the importance of talking about Orientalism, and how this framing of Arabs, Muslims, people in a certain region as backwards and unintelligent and, like you said, unable to do all the things for themselves, is really important, and where the savior complex comes from too. Thank you, Milad. Nida, I saw your hand up again. Did you want to?
No, it's okay.
Okay. Anyone else? We're almost at time, so I want to make sure we have at least 5 minutes for Besma to close us off. But this has been such a really good conversation, and I don't want it to end. But we unfortunately have to end at some point. But again, we can continue these conversations offline and next week. Any last thoughts, comments, questions, feelings?
I have a question. So you mentioned that there are classes, like this online class is also an in-person class. Is that correct? Or
This class specifically is not in person, but we do a lot of education events in person at PAC. And
what's PAC?
Oh, what is PAC? PAC is the Palestinian American Community Center. We are located in Clifton, New Jersey, so we're a physical space. We have many different focus areas from like programming and events, Palestine education, civic engagement. It's a social place. It's I can go on and on. It's like it's a physical hub kind of for the Palestinian Arab community, but also open to everybody. And we bring in a lot of people from the area and from outside the area. If you we have a small library. We're working on a museum. I don't know if that's what you're referring to, Sandra. But Hanan, I don't know if you joined last week, but if you didn't, the recording is up on Google Classroom, and it explains a little bit more about PAC. Our website is pacusa.org. You can also check out all of what we do there, and then you can subscribe to our mailing list to make sure you get all the updates each week about all the events that we have.
Can I put in like a request, I guess? Like I'm from Illinois and I'm not planning to move to New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Can you guys expand to Illinois? Like, are you guys planning to expand to other states, or is it just going to stay local to New Jersey?
I think it would be amazing to expand to other states. I don't know the capacity, and maybe that's a conversation that can happen offline. I know probably with Rania too, but we offer a lot of things virtually and a lot of things hybrid, but as a physical space, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think I can answer that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. But definitely subscribe to our mailing list. I think if all of you aren't, you should, because that's how you can stay up to date with a lot of what we offer. And a lot of what we offer is virtual too.
So there, hi.
Yes.
Is there something similar like this for young adults or elementary kids? Because I would love for my nephews and nieces to learn more about Palestine. Because I don't think they know enough. If there's something like that for the young kids,
yes,
I would definitely sign them up.
Yeah, we do. So as you see in the comments, we have basically the same course, but adjusted for high school students, teenagers. We're flexible a little bit with the age, but definitely for young adults. It's offered in the fall. It's called HOPE. It's called Holding On to Palestinian Existence. So we teach them the same stuff, but obviously catered to their age. And then if you want even younger, we host it in our PAC Summer Fun program. That one is in person, but that's for like for ages, correct me if I'm wrong, like 5 to 12. In person, it's a summer program, and part of it is Palestine education. But on a virtual setting, for young adults like middle school, high school, we offer it online too in the fall. So definitely, all of you definitely should subscribe to our mailing list. I don't know if someone, yes, Rania put it in the chat. You will stay up to date on everything. Follow us on social media. We post all of these on there. But I'm really glad that all of you are appreciating this so much that you want to share it with everybody else. I think on that note, then I'm going to pass it off to Besma for housekeeping and just closing us off.
Thanks, Abia. Yeah, you guys basically asked a lot of the questions I was gonna say. So thank you, Abir. Just really quick to center us back and prep us for next week. So today's class was Centering Palestinian Voices, class 2. Next week we're gonna have part 1 of history, and then we'll follow with part 2. So just a few reminders. So we actually had a lot more planned for you today that we weren't able to get to. So a reminder is, thank you, Lamia. She dropped a bunch of links for our WhatsApp, for our Google Classroom. Please make sure to join both of those if you haven't. If you joined this week and weren't in last week, we'll make sure to follow up and check in with you as well. But definitely join those so you can get all of the links, and we post the recordings and we post the PowerPoints as well as resources. If you're in the WhatsApp, if you're not in the WhatsApp, we really encourage you to join it because that's where we'll be sending the quicker updates. So like reminders, class is starting, here's the Zoom link again. And we would love for you to share out resources. I already saw Hanin was dropping a lot of the links we discussed here. So thanks, Hanan, for helping us with that. If you see something that you think speaks to you, or you think really goes well with our class, or you want to recommend, please drop it there. Just try to be cognizant of how much you're sharing, because everyone's, at an overload when it comes to social media and online. So but we want you to share, just make sure it always fits. And with that, now just a reminder announcement. We do have courses like Abir and Rania have been mentioning already. Okay. We have classes that Abir was mentioning. One of them is actually happening this Saturday, and I highly encourage everyone to join. We're going to have it in person. It's 1 o'clock, and we're actually hosting Mehdi Sabah. He is he's the co-curator of PalFest, if you're familiar, and he edited and co-wrote the book Building New Solidarities with Palestine, Their Borders, Our World. So I think it speaks perfectly to this course. We just had happened to have him and had invited him to come to the event Saturday. So I really think as an extension of this course, you should all try to come. If you're not local enough to come in person, please watch the live stream. It's going to be live streamed and recorded on our social media, so typically our Facebook and then our YouTube. So please try your absolute best to come. I'll link the book for that too, but I did that already on WhatsApp, so make sure to join. And we have another in-person event later, January 30th. We have a Gaza student who's become a great friend of mine, who produced his own short film, and we will also be featuring a documentary, and these are both on Gaza. That'll be January 30th at PAC. And for whoever mentioned, I think it was Hanan, about the Black and Palestinian solidarity, we have on February 24th, I will send you guys the flyer, but we will have a virtual class on that. And in our Freedom is the Future course, we'll be talking about it more as well. So we always have a lot going on. Please make sure, as Abir and Rania and Lamia have said, make sure you subscribe and join. And we will see you all again next week. Thank you.
Mama, can you download this? Yeah?